Welcome to Laying the Leadership Foundation podcast, where Stephanie and I discuss how we are building a leadership development program and hear from guests on their experiences. Hey everyone, welcome to this week's edition of Laying the Leadership Foundation podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Poole. Stephanie and I are joined this week by Derrick Mitchell and Shelby McKay of Washington State. So we're excited to have you two with us, and I guess welcome everyone to this conversation.
All right, Shelby, you are the Assistant Director of Athletics for Student Athlete Development at WSU. Could you give us a little bit of a background on your role and what you do there?
Yeah, of course. So I started here at WSU just over a year ago, coming in from being at George Washington University for 6 years in academics and student athlete development. So I brought a lot of experience around curriculum development and design, of having created the career program at GW and getting my doctorate in education really, or working towards it, I should say, has really prepared me to come in and help redevelop our programming here and put us on the right track for success for our student athletes. So overall, I came in and revamped, and we launched the Cougar Pursuit back in September. And we're focused on all of the career, leadership, and personal development for our student athletes.
That's awesome. So while you were at George Washington, you were in an academic realm as an academic advisor for a while, and then you hopped over to student athlete development. So why did you make that jump, and what did you learn within that transition?
Yeah, for me, I noticed a lot in my one-on-ones with student athletes that a lot of my focus was on career exploration. And I spent a lot of time interacting with the Career Center over time by helping with career coaching and learning about their philosophies. And when I took a career counseling course in my master's program, that's when I really fell in love with career exploration, from strong interest inventory to Clifton Strengths, and then doing DISC assessment with the NCAA really opened up that I can do more than talk about classes and grades and tutoring, and help them continue their career post their time in college. So when the opportunity came to move into that role solely, I jumped at it and fell in love, and I'm never going to go back to academic advising.
So Derrick, a little bit different of a path, as you currently at Washington State are the coordinator of student athlete development and wellbeing, but you also have your background in football. I know some time at Florida State. So I guess tell us a little bit about how you ended up at Washington State.
Yeah, so I had the opportunity after I got done playing to be a graduate assistant in what was at the time called Student Services, which we know now to be Student Athlete Development. So during my 2 years in grad school, I had the opportunity to be a grad assistant within that unit, do a lot of learning, do a lot of kind of soul searching, letting go of that identity of being a student athlete, and then transitioning into the role of working with student athletes and helping them, to figure out what's the next phase of their life. And then from there, once I graduated, just kind of, as we talk about networking, just utilizing my network. Somebody I was very close to in a mentorship role for me, kind of connected me with somebody at Washington State, and they had a position within their student athlete development unit, and I applied, and from there I made the trek to Pullman, Washington. So that's just a little backstory on how I made my way to Washington State.
Well, and then with your journey, I'm sure, at least I haven't encountered, because I'm not in the student athlete development realm as much. I'm more in the communications. But I'm curious to hear and get your thought process on being at a big Power 5 school, Florida State, lots of rich football history there, but also having that experience and be able to relate to your student athletes on a different level than maybe myself would be able to, just because you were at that level as well.
Yeah, 100%. So I think that was a big overarching feeling that I had about making this transition into student athlete development, was just the relatability. So I know we're going to talk about a little law later, but what we just did was strength finders. One of my top 5 strengths was relators. So I really value that, and just kind of building that relationship with people who I've walked their shoes. I've been that student athlete, in a highly competitive environment. And I feel like I could relate to them in that way and help them along that journey and to transitioning into what it will look like afterwards. So that's just kind of how I tied in my student athlete experience, everything that I learned and experienced at Florida State, and then bringing that same experience to Washington State and helping the student athletes here.
That's a nice little segue you gave us there, Derrick. So we're all in NCAA law together. So could you talk to us about why you decided to join law and how law is helping you with Cougar Pursuit? Because you launched that before you came to law. So how is it in like already feet deep in Cougar Pursuit doing this leadership work while also learning about like the basics and the foundations of building that out? So could you just talk to us about that?
Yeah, definitely. The timing was really interesting. In preparing to launch the Cougar Pursuit, we did a lot of listening tours. Me being new, I took a lot of time to meet with different coaching staffs and student athletes. And we had a leadership course already. And talking with colleagues at other schools and even internally, we felt that at first that course would be our leadership programming. And it's offered in the fall and spring. We revamped it to be similar to campus and what the needs were of our student athletes, and try to recruit student athletes to participate. And just because it's a 4-credit class, we ran into challenges where we couldn't get the numbers that we thought we could get enrolled in the course. So we recognized timing wise, it doesn't fit into everyone's schedule. Academic progress, it doesn't fit into everyone's 4-year plan, 5-year plan. So when the opportunity came to apply for the program for law, it made sense. We needed something different, but we couldn't create it on our own. We needed that guidance along the way, especially with already having a course. Like, we kind of are at loss at that point. What do we do when we had this thing in place? How do we go back and start all over? So law has really helped us articulate that process and really put it all together.
So what are your plans for the course moving forward? Have you discussed that? Is it still up in the air? Is it still going to be in play?
So yeah, we've been in discussions about it. So we're still going to move forward with the course, but I think just as Shelby just kind of highlighted, what we wanted to see is how it mixed in with the new law curriculum that we're learning, and the new program that we're building from the ground up. So it's a great course. It is very beneficial, and there is a lot to take away from it. It's just how do we make it efficient, effective, and impactful, in accordance with everything that we're bringing to the table, I believe.
Yeah, and in the last 4 minutes of our breakout session at the end, Corey gave us some ideas, so we're processing that along the way, and we'll probably get some feedback from some of our working group members too.
And you brought up the working group, which I think was one of the things that from the module 1, that's probably our biggest takeaway. And that's something that outside of the theories and some of those other foundation things has been a great help for us. I guess talk us through a little bit about what your formation or what your working group looks like, and how you're using that to really help propel the program forward.
Yeah, that was a new thought process for us. Originally, we weren't in a position to have a full working group committee, just knowing with everyone going to season, we have different schedules, people out of the office, and a lot of people across campus that we knew would be really valuable to give insight into. It was kind of hard to fathom what that could look like. But after talking with everyone else in law, we realized we kind of already established one unofficially, and move forward with making it a little bit more official with how we do presentations. So we had already met with all the coaches beforehand. So I even consider them to be part of this working group, officially or unofficially, however you want to look at it. And then incorporating some of the faculty members that we've come across who are teaching these courses and teaching theories, and getting their input to our student athletes and a few of our staff members. So our plan is to meet with these different individuals separately or in groups based off of their interest areas, and have different presentations along the way. So the Ice Tank Challenge really taught us that we can't teach or present the same ideas to everyone. I don't think I'm going to be able to give a logic model to all of my coaches, and probably most of my student athletes know. But definitely to our faculty members, they'll understand that and they'll give us a little bit more in-depth feedback. So that was really eye-opening to bring that challenge together with the idea of the working groups.
So I don't know about you, but this last module that we have of law was by far my favorite that we've had, even though we've only had two. But I love those personality type assessments, the Strengths Finder, the EQ. Have you guys taken those assessments before law? And if so, did you see a difference in your results?
So yes, we took the strength finders early in the summer, just within our student athlete development unit, and yeah, I had similar results to what I did the very first time I took it. I feel like my 5 strengths, they did align well with who I am. Some things that just I feel like I do maybe naturally that I wasn't intentionally aware of, that just kind of came to me. But yeah, I really enjoyed the whole process of taking that deep dive and figuring those things out. And as I said, just trying to be intentional about the application of it. I know that was the whole overarching thing of module 2, is like application. So just looking forward to taking everything we learned from those personality traits and applying it to different areas and avenues of our student athlete development experience.
So for me, I am trained as a successful coach in Strengths Finder. So I've been in this space for a good amount of time, and I've been instructed not to retake the assessment. So I'm also very much married to my top 5 and know my 34. So I was like, I'm not retaking this. So I definitely love it. We've been teaching it with our student athletes for our new student athlete orientation course. And I've been part of it for probably about 5 years now. So I just like hearing from other people learn about it too, and continue to hear different viewpoints and even new activities along the way, and maybe take a few for us as well. The emotional intelligence assessment was challenging, I would say. I've told a few people I was just really surprised by my results, especially in kind of relating it to strengths. One of my top 5s is relator, but emotional intelligence said that I was a little bit lower in relationship management and social awareness. So that was a little bit challenging to understand when I've been like, oh, I'm a relationship builder. That's what strength says. But understanding more in context what it actually represents and that there's always room for improvement once we had those conversations was really helpful.
EQ assessment broke me down. I was so disappointed with my results.
Yeah, and I was the exact same way, because I'm like, you know what, I'll probably do middle of the pack, whatever. And then I ended up getting like a 68. And then I was reading through all the different things. It's like, if you're a 59, which I had 2 of my individual ones were 61. So I'm like, crap, I'm really close to that 59. I really need some improvement rank. So I think that's something that definitely hit us both a little bit hard in the face. But I guess with your experience with the strength builders, a little bit more so than the EQ, I guess, what have you seen in terms of how your student athletes have really grown from those different type of personality tests, and how they've really embraced that to help them outside of the classroom environment as well?
Yeah, I can actually just talk about a recent example I had. I met with a first year student athlete who has gotten interviews for different internships already. And she couldn't get to the next round. And we did a mock interview and I started to understand why she wasn't getting there. And I was like, do you remember taking strengths back in the fall? And she's like, yeah, I can't remember what they were, but I think one of them was this and one of them was that. I was like, yeah, that's right. Cause I was able to pull them up for her. And we started to talk more about it, and she got really excited remembering what her results were. And then she was able to articulate a lot more about herself in relation to some of the jobs that she was applying to based off of that. So I use it as a great tool for helping people with their resumes and those interview skills. I mean, what better way to answer a question of what are your top 5 strengths or your weaknesses at that too, and be able to talk about that. And then we teach them to focus on your strengths versus your weaknesses. And that's the easiest way to answer that question without trying to sound like a generic response that you might be used to.
I had that exact thought whenever, like last night during law, because I was just like, where was this when I was interviewing for these positions last year? Like, this would have helped me so much with that. What are your strengths and weaknesses? Like, it would have been so much easier, and I would have been much more confident in my answers to those questions if I had done this assessment ahead of time.
So I guess with the first two modules done, I guess I know we touched a little bit on it, but what has been, I guess, the shooting star moment or the aha moment, that really where everything started to click, or something that you didn't know was like, well, that's common sense. I should have known that, but didn't.
It's like a start. I think that one of the great moments, and Shelby briefly touched on it, was just the conversations that we've had for the like a needs assessment within our coaching staff. So we've been able to connect with all of our coaching staffs except one at this point, and they're on the schedule coming up soon. But just those conversations of taking a deeper dive into what is their definition of leadership. How does that look on their team? Who are their strongest leaders? Are those leaders selected by their skill level or by their true leadership ability? Just finding out those different things, just to get a better sense of how we could tailor this program specifically to each team, and not just make it a one size fits all. So I think that was, up until this point, that's kind of been my biggest takeaway. We've been kind of behind the scenes, of course, putting all the pieces together, working on it, brick by brick. But I think that was a substantial kind of foundational piece that's really helped push us forward.
And for me, it was mostly in module 1, going through like the theories and the competencies, even the resources in the books that we have. It was validation that a lot of the research I've done in the past and the knowledge I've gained from my doctorate program and my master's program has really relates to what we were thinking of building, and what in the direction I was thinking that we should head, especially like when social change model has been brought up in almost every session, and it's on our campus too. It's like, okay, this keeps reoccurring. Like, this is the approach that we need to take, or to using the leadership challenge, which I've read a couple of times already, and knowing like, okay, now I have the resource to pair these activities to this theory or this framework that I've known for a while. So it just validated some of the things that I was thinking, and knowing that I was in the right place, and then gives me confidence in us building this together over the next few months.
That kind of goes into my next question for you. The last, I think, 2 sessions, you guys have spoken up about either leadership activities or programming that you guys have done, and I've loved all the ones that you have shared. So where do you find that inspiration for these programs? What resources do you have, and what advice do you have to student athlete development professionals or anyone doing leadership programming as they're creating these activities and programs?
Yeah, none of the programs or activities we've created have I actually created. Like, we've gotten them from other people, other resources. So whether it's the activity books that we've gotten for law, or experiences from campus, were kind of the biggest things. I've always made an effort to stay connected with student affairs. While at GW, I was a GA in student affairs. So I was involved in leadership programming and saw what activities they did. I was also in campus recreation, so ropes courses are the place to go for any type of activity. And our class that we have, half of this class meets at the ropes course. So every Thursday there is a leadership activity centered around anything that we talk about in the class. So we have 16 weeks worth of activities already prepared for us that we can duplicate in the course or in our future programming. And then just other individuals outside. So like the Prisoner's Dilemma activity that I presented to you all, I got from a former coach that I worked with. So that came out of nowhere. I didn't even know it existed. But people have different ideas. If you just take some time to talk to them, you never know what they may have up their sleeve.
Totally agree with the ropes course. When I was a master's student, I facilitated at our school's ropes course and loved every minute of it. All the leadership lessons, activities are great. So if we can get our students to a ropes course at least one time during our leadership program, I'm going to be a happy person.
Well, as we begin to wrap up, there's one last question that we ask every single person, or we started asking every single person who comes on here. So curious to hear your thoughts on it. And I'll ask the question and expound upon it, what you guys think for a little bit. But the question is, basically, we know you're implementing this program and we know there's going to be hurdles in the way at some point in time. What is a hurdle that you're looking forward to overcoming? So while you guys think about that for a second, this question really stemmed a couple weeks ago from my talk with Amanda Ekeboot from UMass, and just wanting to hear what they're going through. Obviously, what we're going through at AIC as a small Division II school is way different than what you guys are at Washington State, but at the same time, there might be something similar to it that we might be able to help each other out with. So that's where that conversation or this question ended up coming from. So if you want to have an answer each or a combined answer, it doesn't matter to us, but I'm more concerned, or not concerned, but more intrigued about your answer, because I want to hear what's something you're excited about overcoming.
Derek, you got some ideas first?
I think something for me is just kind of being a former student athlete, just coming out of it not too long ago, and I'm sure we've all had these times where student athletes' time is of the essence, and it's hard sometimes to get them excited about things outside of their sport, or just things that may not be initial. They don't see the initial value in right now. So I think that overcoming the hurdle of figuring out, how we will get our student athletes engaged, how we will keep them bought in throughout the whole process, how we will, track their leadership growth throughout it and allow them to see it in real time, and to really, allow them to take what they're learning within our leadership program back to their teams. Their coach see the value in it, they see the value in it, and they continue to grow throughout the process. So I'm excited to overcome the hurdle of getting them initially bought in, and then seeing their growth throughout the time, and letting them get their feet wet to start, and then initially just grow and become the great leaders that we know that they can be, that they have within them.
So kind of off of that, the leadership growth piece is what stands out to me, and just proving the program is worth it for future buy-in. One of the reasons why we took the time to meet with coaches before really diving into the logic model was, how do coaches assess this? Like, what do they see in their sports as leadership? How do they define it? So how can we show that after year 1, 2, 3, and et cetera? So coaches continue to buy in and support us, and then carry the messaging that we are providing and educating within the program, so it is everlasting and we can see that leadership growth. That assessment piece is just so challenging to articulate at times, especially when it's qualitative. So putting my research cap on, I'm excited to dive into that once I finish my dissertation.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys both for joining us today, Shelby and Derrick, and we're excited to follow your journey along over the next, I guess, year and a half, whatever it is, especially as we wrap up law here in a couple months, and then start to implement everything that we're learning, and seeing what you guys put out, and seeing what we can learn from you guys as well.
Thanks again for having us.
Thank you. Really appreciate the opportunity, and excited to see what you all come up with as well as the rest of our cohort. So I think our law class is going to be one to remember. So we'll keep that in mind.
I mean, I think we already are. I mean, we're the first virtual one too. So I think we're definitely one to remember. We might be the guinea pigs, but I hope that we come out on top as the favorites out of all the cohorts that have gone through so far.
I
Exactly.
mean, how could we not be a favorite?
Awesome. Well, thank you guys both so much for joining us. And for those listening at home, be sure to join us next week as we talk a little bit about our formation group and what's been going on behind the scenes. Thanks for joining us this week on Laying the Leadership Foundation podcast. Be sure to subscribe and review this podcast wherever you listen. If you found value in this podcast, do us a favor and share this episode with someone else. As always, keep laying the foundation.